Okay. Hey, I noticed watching the two videos that Sony put out that nobody made a mention of this. Nobody at all. And that makes me wonder. Um, I want to show you something. This video is going to be hardcore and irrefutable, undeniable. Sony released a new series of lenses called G-MASTER. Now, not making fun of the name, which of course is plenty of material there, I would like you to take a look at these lenses and tell me what you see at the base of those lenses. Okay? Well, that's interesting. That bottom one is an 85mm f1.4. Now, it doesn't matter, of course Sony doesn't make lenses. It doesn't matter if Zeiss makes it, or Nikon makes it, or Canon makes it. There's irreducible facts of optical necessity. This is an 85mm f1.4. Let me actually remove the rear cap. Now the Canon mount basically looks the same, slightly different. Tell me what you can see here, or rather don't see here, that you saw on the 85mm 1.4 from Sony. You see the base of that? Let's go over to their other set right here. That's their three set, the 70-200, 2470, and the 85mm f1.4. Do you see that? Okay, well, let's take a look at the optical design. And you see that huge gap after the rear element right there? That's their diagram, by the way, not mine. Now, I mean, I knew that before looking at the diagram. All you have to do is look at the lens. Now, here's the important point. That's a full-frame sensor in the Sony A7 series. What you're seeing at the base of that lens, all three of those lenses actually, is this. That's what you're seeing. That means that Sony cannot escape optics. It's kind of like death and taxes. Nobody can escape it, right? It's unescapable. It's unavoidable. Say the debt that all men must pay is death and taxes or something like that. So let me make this Zeiss 85mm 1.4 look exactly, basically exactly, like the Sony new G-MASTER series of lenses. They're 85mm f1.4. Let's see if they look alike. Yeah, let me see. Does that look the same? It sure does. It does look the same, doesn't it? You see, what is at the base of every one of those lenses is this. What's the issue with that? I mean, you're using that Metabones adapter to mount Fuji lenses on, so what's the issue? The issue is flim-flam. Design flaw. What's the design flaw? It means it's a full-frame sensor. And to get that flare out from the rear element, because that lens, that Sony E-MOUNT is so shallow that it is impossible. Someone could say, oh my God, look at this. It's a Sony full-frame camera. And look how thin it is. I mean, it's not a lot thicker than this right here. Well, this is a DX sensor. Sony can never make an E-MOUNT full-frame sensor lens that small. It'd have to be with this adapter on the back of it. To cover that large sensor, they have to push the lens further out in front of the camera. Well, all the hype and BS and twaddle and nonsense and baloney and rubbish and poppycock and nonsense, wrong lens cap, of this being a thinner camera. Well, it's not. Well, this is a thinner camera, yeah, because the rear element of that lens doesn't immediately have to shoot out light and go wah like that to cover a full frame sensor. There's a DX crop sensor underneath that. It's like, well, okay, fine. I want a full frame sensor. Okay, well, that's fine. That mount is so shallow that every one of those lenses has to be extended out. It's like saying, well, we need a barkeep, but we don't want him to look too big. We want a midget to tend the bar. It's like, well, we can get you a midget to tend the bar, but he doesn't quite make it to the counter, so we're going to have to get him some really big platform shoes. You know, it's like, well, I love that little midget. He's a little person, whatever. You know, we have to elevate him. We love the look out of him, but you can't actually do the work. So you can make the camera with that really shallow full-frame sensor, that E-MOUNT, but it is an optical, irreducible absolute that is unavoidable by Sony or anybody else on this earth, that you can't make a lens in 85mm 1.4 that's like this, baby. Can't do it. It can't be done. The distance that is covered in and by a normal DSLR by its mirror box depth, which is basically like this Metabone spacer. You know, obviously DSLR is a thick body. Well, that mirror box is basically like the built-in Metabones adapter, that space gap to allow the full-frame lens divergence to cover that big honking full-frame sensor. The reason that those lenses from Sony are so damn long, and they have that big long neck on the base of them, kind of remind me of those people that have the rings around their neck and their necks are stretched out about yay far above their shoulders, because each lens needs a stretched adapter built into it. Yeah. The shallow E-mount cannot accept lenses normally like a normal DX mirrorless or a normal DSLR. So what you're seeing here is a design flaw. You know, well, it is and it isn't, but correctly it is. It is an optical unescapable necessity that the base of every one of those lenses that's fast, and all of those are fast lenses, has a big old neck on the base of it. See, what you've done is you've taken that, well, that camera, that Sony full-frame A7R is so thin, you know, I love it, and it's a full-frame sensor. Yeah, but what you've done is you've taken that thick mirror box that sits on the front of every DSLR, and you've replaced that necessary air gap, space gap, to let the rear element diverge out the light to cover that big-ass full-frame sensor. You've chopped it off the camera, and you've placed it on the back, you placed it on the butt end of that lens like an ass wart. It's like, geez, so that's why there's that big bottleneck on the base of it. Yeah, you see it right here. The rear element ends right there. It's a necessary space for rear element light projection divergence to cover that full frame sensor. See that 85mm f1.4? You see that? Both of these, other than a very slight variation, are the same optical necessity. The only difference is this is for an E-mount, and it has a big ass Metabones adapter, basically, in essence, built on the back of that lens. Yeah. So that camera that you think is thin, that camera that you think is thin, ain't thin at all. All it's done is replace the necessary gap from that camera to the back end of that lens. So tell me again how that camera is thin. This is an optical irreducible necessity. It's irrefutable, it's undeniable, and it's unquestionable. It's a fact. Sony can't escape it, nor can Zeiss, nor can Nikon, nor can Canon, nor can Fuji, nor can anybody else. Can't be done. Can't be done. Well, Fuji can actually escape it because that's a crop sensor. Sensor is smaller, doesn't need as much divergence. That's why you can make these tiny little lenses like this, because it's not a full frame coverage sensor. It doesn't need it. The E-mount does. So the next time someone tells you that E-mount A7R2 or A7 Sony is, you know, it's so slim, you know, I love that, it's the camera so slim. It's not. They've replaced the necessary thickness here to the ass of each one of these lenses. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Undeniability, unescapable. Luxi Veritas, thanks for watching. Catch you later. Bye. Bye! Epic fail.